Well, welcome to another Chromebook webinar. My name is John Sawash. Thanks for joining me. Tonight we are going to be exploring 4 ways that you can use Chromebooks in your classroom. These 4 ways are very simple. You can use them easily at any grade level, kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade. Very simple to integrate. You're probably doing some of these things already, but it'll provide a helpful framework that you can use in your classroom and give some new ideas you can take back with you as well. During this webinar, you're going to learn some different strategies. I'm going to be sharing some lesson examples, some very practical ideas. I'll also have templates and things that you'll receive access to as well. All of those resources, templates, and links I will be sending out immediately after this webinar. If you are watching it live, you'll receive that very quickly, and if you're watching this as a recording, you'll get it if you have not already with all the links that I'll be sharing with you as well. During the webinar, I'm also going to be sharing a little bit of information about my upcoming fall course called Teach with Chrome. This is a beginner to intermediate level course that will help you teach with Chromebooks. If you are new to using Chromebooks, if you're unfamiliar with what a Chromebook can do, how Chromebooks are different than Mac PC and iPads, I think this will be a helpful course. But regardless whether or not you decide to take the course, I think you'll find this webinar helpful. For those of you who are unfamiliar with me, my name is John. Again, good to be with you. I'm a former high school science teacher, taught high school science for 6 years outside of Detroit, Michigan. I was a high school principal for a couple years as well, and I'm also an author and course creator. The book that I wrote is called The Chromebook Classroom. There's a copy right here. This is something that I'm very proud of. I think it's a very helpful guide. Many of you probably have a copy. I'll be actually referencing some content in the book, so if you have one, you'll find this to be a valuable resource. Well, that's a little bit about me. Let's jump right into the learning. This evening we'll be talking again about 4 ways you can use Chromebooks in your classroom. Let's get started. Rule number 1, or way number 1, is large group collaboration. Now, this is an area where technology has actually significantly improved what we can do in the classroom. It is very difficult to engage every single student in your classroom at the same time. Without technology, if you're using pencil and paper, it's hard to do this. Every kid can't be writing on the same piece of paper at the same time. I don't know that I would call note-taking a very engaging experience. Smart boards, same kind of thing. You're lecturing, but only one kid can come up and interact with the smart board at a time. With a classroom set of Chromebooks, you can engage every single student simultaneously. Now, here are some key aspects of this first instructional strategy. First of all, we're assuming that every student has a device. If you're not one-to-one with Chromebooks, then this probably isn't going to be a instructional method you're going to be able to do easily. Now, you don't have to have a dedicated device. If you have carts, if you have a computer lab, you could easily do this as long as you can get a device for every student. This is more of a teacher-centered or teacher-guided activity that you, the teacher, is going to set up, create, and guide students through this activity, and all the students will be working at more or less the same pace and completing things together. The key here is that every student is actively engaged. Many of the tools and ideas that I'll reference will collect data on what students are doing, and you as the teacher can review that data later on to determine who understands the concepts that you're teaching. Now, here are some tools that work really well for this type of instruction. You're probably familiar with a few of these. Certainly Google Drive is wonderful. You have many students can work in a Google document, Google slide presentation at the same time. And then you have kind of the game style tools, things like Quizlet and Kahoot, Quizlet Live that is, where students are doing review activities, answering questions, reviewing concepts that you've covered in class. One of my personal favorite tools for engaging every student is Pear Deck. Pear Deck is a presentation tool where students join your session live and you can ask them questions and give them activities to do as you guide them through a lesson experience. Lots of great options. Today, I did want to highlight a newer option, especially for Chromebooks, and that is Google Expeditions. So Google Expeditions has been available for iPads, phones, tablets for quite a while, but Expeditions is now available for Chromebooks, and you can take your students on a virtual tour. So you can explore the Globe Theater, the International Space Station, the pyramids. You can go somewhere with them, and you get to be Miss Frizzle and guide them through that activity. There are nearly 1,000 different tours that you can experience. So pretty much any subject area, any grade level, there's something for you. This is great for history, great for science, so many great tours. Google Expeditions is available and compatible with most Chromebooks. So this is an Android app. If your Chromebook is Android compatible, then Google Expeditions would be a tool that you'd be able to use. You guide it, the students are participating with you in real time, which is a lot of fun. A couple other just simple ideas that I've done before and have been successful. Writing a class story is a lot of fun with Google Docs, where students take turns writing sentences, and it's really interesting. You have some students will go back and correct grammar and spelling, as others are adding in detail. Interesting. As a science teacher myself, I love using Google Sheets to compile lab data. We'll talk more about that. We mentioned Pear Deck for direct instruction, Google Forms for class polls, surveys, things like that, and then Kahoot and Quizlet Live for review activities. Here's another quick activity that you can use to engage every student. So as a science teacher, I was able to turn a lab assignment from a 3-day assignment down to a 1.5 day assignment. And we did that because we could do the assignment and compile our data using Google Sheets all at the same time. Whereas, previously we would talk about the experiment, then we would do the experiment, and then we would have to spend a half day compiling our data. This is a really fun activity that I do with M&Ms. It's a great time of year. Halloween is a great time to do this, where students predict the color of M&Ms in a bag, and then use Google Sheets to tabulate and record that information, and all the data updates in real time. I'll provide you with the link with the template to that activity. It's a lot of fun, especially at this time of year when candy is very plentiful and easy to go around. Just to make a couple of connections here to the Common Core and Next Gen Science standards, if you look through those standards, there's many relevant standards to data collection, planning, editing, revising, writing, using technology to produce and publish writing, analyzing and interpreting data. The activities that I've shared with you here would absolutely satisfy all of those and many more. So that's the first of our 4 instructional methods, the large group collaboration, where again the key is to engage every student in a guided activity that helps meet your curriculum goals. Now, I'd like to invite you to consider enrolling for my upcoming course, Teach with Chrome. And it's a fully online course. I use Google Classroom to facilitate the course. Everyone who registers for the course will also get a copy of my book, The Chromebook Classroom, which I just mentioned. In that course, a couple of the things that we'll learn about that are related to this first instructional strategy. We'll give you a tour of the Chromebook, everything you need to know about the Chromebook, those special keys on the keyboard that are kind of funky. We'll talk about some assistive technology tools for students who have IEPs and need accommodations. If you're new to Chromebooks, switching from Mac to Chromebook, iPad to Chromebook, we'll kind of review the differences between them and what you need to know. And then, as always, the entire course is filled with lesson ideas. We'll talk about collaborative note-taking, interactive presentations, a couple of fun assignments, collaborative study guides, a few of my favorite things. These are lessons that are actually in my book. You'll have a copy of that and be able to reference that through the course. I am offering a special discount for those of you who are watching this webinar. If you'd like to register. Normally the course is $125. If you register using the special link that's up on the screen, chrome.tech/4wayswebinar, you can register for $99, include the course and a copy of my book, The Chromebook Classroom. So we've got large group instruction. Now let's talk about small group projects. So in this instructional method, you do not need a device for every student. You really only need maybe 1 device for every 3 students. If you are one-to-one, then that's great, but every group at minimum will need a Chromebook to use. A couple of the other key aspects of this instructional idea, every group is going to create a unique project. I like to give enough freedom so that every group can be creative within the parameters that you've set. You don't necessarily want every group to have a cookie cutter project that takes all the fun away. We're really going to be emphasizing teamwork and collaboration. Groups are going to need to work together on this. These group assignments can be as long or as short as you want, and that is something you're really going to have to think through. It can be a very short project that you complete in one class period, or maybe a multi-class period project as well. These group projects are a good opportunity to focus on writing and research skills, which students kind of overlook as they just think about the project they're creating. So the end product might be a website, might be a video, might be a podcast, but there's a lot of reading, research, and writing that has to take place in order for them to get to that final project. So these projects work really, really well for social studies, language arts, certainly science as well. Here's some of my favorite tools for facilitating these group projects. We've got videos is a good option here, so Powtoon, WeVideo are all very good. If you're interested in audio, Soundtrap is a good option. Soundtrap is a collaborative audio recording and editing tool, kind of similar to GarageBand, but multiple students can work on it simultaneously. Lucid Press is great for kind of graphic designs, kind of like Microsoft Publisher or Adobe InDesign. Sutori is a really interesting one for history teachers. You can create a timeline. It's a website, but it's specifically geared for the creation of timelines. Really, really a cool one. Tour Builder, Jamboard, those are some of the other tools that are on the screen. We'll talk about some of those here coming up. Here are some sample ideas to consider. Certainly building websites, creating websites is a great option. If you've ever done a poster project in your classroom, then you can easily convert that poster project into a website project. Google Sites, Adobe Spark are two great tools for doing that. Surveys, having students create a survey and then send that survey out to the school community or the larger community. That's really good for math classrooms. You can collect that data and then you can do analysis of the data coming in. It's a great group project. We talked about timelines with Sutori. Magazines, great option. You talk about Lucid Press, Google Slides. I'll show you a couple examples of that here in just a moment. Videos as well. We talked about video, podcasts, and then brainstorming is an interesting one. That's kind of your single class period activity. You get a group of kids together, say brainstorm this topic, this idea. Ziteboard and Jamboard are two really good collaborative tools for kind of whiteboarding, just sketching, drawing, brainstorming kind of activities. Again, like we mentioned earlier, the Common Core Next Gen Science Standards definitely hit on all of these skills as well. For math, we're using data from a sample or survey if you're going to do Google Forms. For language arts, we're integrating visual information with other digital text and information. So Common Core is really big on students mixing text, audio, video, images, so multiple forms of communication to convey a point or conclusion. One more, this is a language arts standard for 7th grade, shared research and writing projects. So even the Common Core actually has embedded in it this idea of collaboration. And so by doing these group projects, you'll be meeting that particular skill. Here's a couple of examples that I've collected and created. The one at the bottom there was created by Ryan O'Donnell, a really creative educator. He uses Google Slides to create these really cool magazine spreads. So he's done a couple. He's got a Time magazine example and a National Geographic example. I'll provide you links with to both of those. I'm also a really big fan of a tool called Lucid Press. This is kind of like Microsoft Publisher for the web. Google Slides is great. You can do a lot of cool things with Google Slides, but there are some limitations with it when it comes to things like text wrapping, flowing text, creating things for print. And Lucid Press is a great free option for schools that you might want to consider. So the Explorer magazine spread that you see there is something that I created to just kind of showcase what you could do with this tool called Lucid Press. Really good one. Again, I'll send you the templates and links to those so that you can check them out. So that's the first idea. You have kind of a magazine or print kind of graphic design kind of idea. Second option is an audio story or podcast. So audio is the hot right now. Like everybody wants to talk about podcasting. You have voice assistants like Amazon Echo and Alexa and Google Home. We can jump on that bandwagon as well. We can co-opt kind of that popularity for use in the classroom. Now, when you hear the word podcast, you might think of a weekly show that comes out every week indefinitely, but you do not have to make that long-term commitment in order to incorporate audio into your classroom. This is an interesting example here from an English classroom where students wrote something and then they just did a dramatic reading of that thing. So you might have a small group of students reenact a famous story or historical event. They can record that, edit that, really short, 2-3 minute clip max, I would probably estimate. A lot of fun, kind of a break from the typical written projects that they're familiar with. All good audio projects do require strong writing skills. Your audio project is only as good as the script or the planning or the outline that you've created for it. So it's going to emphasize those writing skills, even though the end result is an audio recording. A couple of ideas from my online course coming up and also my book. During this online course, one of the major topics we cover are the best Chrome apps and extensions for your classroom. So if you are interested in that audio project, you're going to need to know what tools am I going to use to record the audio? How am I going to edit the audio? How will I publish that audio? We'll go over all of that in the course. I've already mentioned a couple times in this webinar the use of Android applications on a Chromebook. There are a few important things that you need to know about if you want to take advantage of this new feature. You're going to need to work with your school district to enable and set up that system so that you can run Android apps on your Chromebook. We'll give you everything you need to know about that. If you're an early elementary teacher, during this course we'll be talking about how to get students signed in quickly, how to manage that login process so that you can save as much instructional time as possible. I do have some more lesson examples, again, that come from the Chromebook Classroom. If you have a copy of the book, you can look up these page numbers and get those examples. Things I haven't talked about here, infographics, great tool for group projects. There's this fun activity called Interactive Museum, which is really cool, group or whole class activity. And then another fun one called Design a Restaurant, which gets into a lot of math, critical thinking skills. So just a couple of highlights from the course. If you're interested, again, you can register for that course for $99, which includes a copy of my book. Let's get into tip number 3, instructional idea number 3, using Chromebooks for individual tasks and enrichment. Now, this is an instructional strategy that most of you are doing already. I'm hoping to be able to add some new ideas that you can take back to your classroom. For this activity, you're going to need a device for every or at least most of your students. Now, you might want to mix some technology activities with some non-tech activities as well, and that will allow you to get by with less than a device for every student. For these individual activities, every student is going to be working independently, and it really emphasizes and allows differentiation. So students are going to be working at their own speed, they're going to be working on different assignments. It's going to be a little bit chaotic. A lot of people are going to be doing a lot of different things, but that's okay. That's part of the beauty of this particular instructional idea. The key to make this successful is ensuring that every student knows what is expected of them, they know what they're trying to accomplish, and what the end result is. And that way you can hold them accountable for what they do during class, so saying how much closer to our goal have you gotten. HyperDocs is a great example of this, where you have a list of activities and students are working through those activities at their own pace. Let's get into some ideas. Now, a lot of great tools for these individual tasks. We can do image editing with tools like Pixlr or Canva. We might be doing some individual audio recording. We can use Google Keep for note-taking, research, if you're doing some kind of a research project. WeVideo, Screencastify are great video options. Quizlet, if they need to review just essential knowledge, people, places, events, stuff like that. Some of these we've already talked about. Google Drive, Lucid Press are all great choices for these individual assignments. Some of the things that I've done in my class, you might want to try, certainly essays, writing assignments, very good for these individual ones. Presentations, image projects. I love using Canva for that. I've got a couple of examples I'll show you here in a minute. Recording audio, so exit tickets, reflections, dramatic reading, even just practicing reading fluency by reading something and then listening back to it. Newsletters, citations, looking at research projects, all great individual assignment. Common Core really gets into that research stuff. Same thing with the Next Gen Science standards. You know, it talks about gathering and synthesizing information, gathering information from multiple print and digital sources, writing, reading, evaluating, expressions. A lot of important skills there. This is one of my favorite projects. This is a challenging one. It looks very simple, but ends up being quite difficult. I call it the Mount Rushmore project. The idea is that you require students to pick the 5 most important whatevers of what you're studying. So if you're studying the Civil War, who are the 5 most important figures of the Civil War, or the 5 most important battles of the Civil War? If you're studying genetics, what are the 5 most important discoveries in the field of genetics over the last 50 years? What are the 5 most important historical events of a particular period of time? So there's 2 parts to this assignment. Part 1 is they have to pick the 5, and they can create some kind of a graphic like this using Canva or Pixlr to design that graphic. Part 2 is that they have to justify how they came to the conclusion that those 5 things are the most important. I don't care, don't tell them this, but I don't care what 5 things they pick as long as they can articulate why those are the 5 most important things. And typically that can take the form of a written assignment. It can be an audio recording. You could do a video if you wanted to. But it's a great way for students to make evaluations and judgments about the content that you've been learning. So I would teach them about a particular topic, subject, period of history, and then have them make that decision, make those choices at the end to demonstrate their understanding of that period of time or core principles. Another good example, my kids love this. So this video here is actually from, was created by my own students, my own kids, my 2 oldest. And this was created using Adobe Spark, which is a very good, very simple way to create video in the classroom. So this video here took us about 2 class periods to complete, from the writing, taking the photos, and putting it all together. It's very good for elementary all the way up through high school. It's not a super involved thing. You could easily take that Mount Rushmore project and have students create a Adobe Spark video highlighting the 5 things and why they chose those 5 things. Great way if you don't want to go, super deep into things like WeVideo where it's very involved and a little more complex. Adobe Spark is a great way to get them there. I'm going to share 2 more ideas, both related to Google Slides. Towards the end of the year or the end of the semester, you might want to consider doing a portfolio. So Google Slides is a great way to do that. I have my kids go and pick a template from Slides Carnival. It's a website that just has hundreds and hundreds of Google Slide templates. They pick their favorite, and then I have them choose 5 projects that they did over the course of the year or the semester. They put a picture or some artifact of that project, and then I have them write or record a short reflection about what they learned, why this particular project was important to them. I will give you this example here that you see on the screen. I actually took advantage of the audio feature for Google Slides. So this was elementary students. They're not typing as proficiently, so I actually had them record their reflection. And we use this Google Slides audio feature, which is still being tested. Not everyone will have it, to insert that recording into the slide presentation. It's really cool. Parents love being able to see and hear how their students have been learning over the course of the school year. I'll give you an example of that. It's very simple, easy to do, but a great individual assignment. Here's another one. This is also Google Slides. My students are doing this kind of assignment this year as well. So this is a daily journal using Google Slides. I've created a Google Slides template, which has, I think, 6 or so different slide templates. Each day, students pick their favorite template, they can pick every one they want, and then they respond to the journal prompt that you can post into Google Classroom or write up on the whiteboard. Very easy to do. You can do it daily, you can do it weekly, every other day, as often as you want, but over the course of the year, all of their journal prompts will be in one central location. Really simple and easy to set up. So I'll give you that template as well. During my online course, we'll go over some of these things as well. We will talk more about working with images, audio, and video on your Chromebook. So what are the best tools for editing an image or recording audio or working with video? If you have touchscreen Chromebooks, we'll talk about the best tools for taking advantage of those touchscreen devices. Some of the things we'll also get into include Chromebook management tips. So how to optimize your Chromebooks for learning, how to make sure that your students aren't playing games and randomly browsing the web during class time, making sure that they're spending their time wisely. A couple of other fun projects that are in the book and we'll talk about in the course include close reading assignments, great for touchscreen, flipped book reviews, which is a cool thing to do, and then a collaborative presentation project I call the Science of Injuries, which is a science project I used to do with my students. So those are some of the things you can look forward to in the course if you think that would be a helpful experience for you. Again, you can go to chrm.tech/4wayswebinar to learn more and sign up. Idea number 4, learning stations. Now this is a strategy that elementary teachers use all the time, but for some reason we tend to forget about it at the middle and especially high school level, but I'd like to bring it back. I used to do this with my high school anatomy students and it worked really well, and if you sprinkle a little technology in there, it can really be an effective strategy. The basic idea is that you're going to take your class period, 50 minutes, 55 minutes, and you're going to divide it into 10-minute stations. So maybe 5 10-minute stations. And at each station, students will learn something or create something. It's amazing how quickly a class period goes when you're rotating every 10 minutes. This is a great idea, especially at the high school level, when you feel like you're kind of stuck in a rut. You've been doing the same thing day after day. Students are getting bored. You're getting bored. You can shake things up by doing a station day. It's a lot of fun. It's less work for you during the class period because students are rotating very, very quickly. At minimum, you're going to need 1 device per station, probably more depending on how many students you have. I really enjoy mixing tech and non-tech stations. So as a science teacher, at one station I might put a microscope and students are looking through the microscope, and then at the next station they might be watching a video. And so you can mix hands-on, paper, and technology-based stations. One of the other things that I enjoy doing is making myself one of the stations. So students will rotate, let's say there's 5 stations they rotate through during the course of the class period. Every group of students will spend 5 minutes talking to me where I can ask them questions, answer their questions, and try to get a better sense on what they know and don't know so that I can help continue to move them forward. So you have to kind of do some math to figure out the proper number of stations based on the number of students you have, the amount of time you have, and how much time you want to spend at each of the stations. So many great web-based tools that we can use for stations. Google Earth is a brilliant one. Google Earth is such a great tool that you can just explore the world and look at a region or satellite imagery of whatever you're studying. Flipgrid is a great option, so students can record each student or just the group can record a quick reflection or tell you what they're doing. And the neat thing is, as the stations rotate, the number of videos will increase so they can record their own video and then watch the videos from the other groups as well. And you can mix that across multiple hours if you teach several sections. Math teachers, Desmos activities are really good for stations. So maybe they watch a video on a particular algebraic concept, and then they're going to go and use Desmos to actually solve a problem based on that same concept. Video's great, a lot of great video tools. So TED Ed, the TED Talks videos, get a little excerpt of that. Edpuzzle, we're going to talk about here in just a minute. Blend Space is a good one as well. And then as a science teacher, just so many great manipulative options that you could consider. Right in the middle of this slide, there's a picture of Pocket Lab, which is a sensor that works very, very well with Chromebooks that can measure pressure, speed, height, rotation. And so you can do all kinds of fun science experiments collecting data, and then another station you can do something with that data. Let's look at a couple of interesting assignments. Again, I'm not a fan of technologies just for the sake of technology. I love hands-on, especially as a science teacher. One thing that you can do is if you have a physical project or physical manipulative you want students to work with, you can just have a Chromebook or a camera there and just say, snap a picture of your group completing this activity or working on this particular thing. So there's some pictures of my own students completing a science lab activity with toothpicks about enzymes. They can upload that to Google Classroom or share that with you just so you can have a record of what they were doing. Edpuzzle is a really great tool for station activities. So Edpuzzle allows you to select a video from YouTube, stick that video into Edpuzzle, and then Edpuzzle will allow you to add questions, stopping points. So when students watch 30 seconds, it stops and then asks them a multiple choice or free response answer. And that will help you better understand if they're actually watching and understanding the video or just sitting there chatting while the video plays in the background. Edpuzzle is a great tool for doing that. I'll give you an example of a video that I've created using Edpuzzle just for reference. One interesting way that you can mix paper and technology, especially in this station activity, is by integrating QR codes into your assignment. Now, there's a couple different ways that I can do this. At the elementary level, what I like to do is select my favorite different activities. So maybe I'm going to use Spelling City or ABC or Splashtop Math, like whatever tools you use on a regular basis. Create a little QR code that points students to a particular lesson or resource. I actually will laminate those cards and then I'll just pull out, say, okay, today we're working on spelling. I'll pull out 3 or 4 station QR cards and lay them on a table. My students know how to select the QR code app to scan that. It takes them right to the activity that I want them to complete. At the high school, middle and high school level, you may want students, just to keep it simple, you may want students to write down their answers or responses to the activities that you're doing. So I might have them look at a microscope and then draw what they see. But then in the next station, they're going to watch a video and I want them to write down an answer to a question. I can mix the paper and digital assignments by adding a QR code to the printed worksheet that I hand them so that they get to each station. The Chromebooks are already there and opened up. They don't have to log in or anything, and they just hold up their paper to the camera, scan that QR code, and complete the activity, write down the response before they move on to the next station. This works really well for hyperdocs. I'm going to give you an example that I created for a language arts classroom. The hyperdoc is on Fahrenheit 451. So students be reading the book and completing some digital activities, and I've just included the QR codes for easy access so they can scan and then write down their response. So whether it's elementary or middle and high school, I think QR codes can really help power this particular instructional idea. In the online course that starts later this month, we're going to talk about creating those types of resources. So we'll talk about getting your stuff into the cloud, utilizing Google Drive to save and create resources for your students. We'll be sharing some activities like Venn diagrams, virtual field trips. We'll talk more about augmented reality, how to do that. Essential keyboard shortcuts and productivity tips for you as a teacher to help you use your Chromebook more effectively. Some troubleshooting tips. There are times when students appear to break their Chromebook, but they're not actually broken. They've just done weird stuff to it. So I'll show you how to undo some of those weird things that students sometimes do. I would love the opportunity to work with you for an extended period of time. This is more of a one-way communication here in a webinar, but during the course, you work directly with me. I'm in and active in the course, sharing ideas, answering questions, updating the course as things change, and I discover new resources as well. So if you would like to really increase your use of Chromebooks and your comfort level in using those Chromebooks, I hope you'll consider joining Teach with Chrome, which starts later in October. Head over to chrm.tech/4ways webinar for that special discount just for you. Well, that wraps up this webinar for Teach with Chrome. I hope you found some new tips and tricks. As I mentioned, all the resources that I've shared during this presentation, I will be sending you an email so that you receive that. If you're watching this live, that email will come out very shortly. If you're watching the recording, you should have received that email along with the link to this video, and you can go back and click on all those links in there to get access to the templates and lesson ideas that I've mentioned. Teach with Chrome, my online course, opens in the middle of October. It wraps up in November, so if you're interested in jumping on with that, please head over to the website. I'll send that link out. You can join for that special $99 deal, which includes a copy of my book. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate your time, and I wish you great success as you teach with Chrome.